the market.
I think you'll find just because of Telegram is a unique thing, people will build different use cases than we've seen yet use elsewhere. And I think that's going to be fascinating. What people think of is like, how do I build things for the network? We saw what got built on top of Telegram already, and what's been built on top of Facebook, these kind of closed networks, really different stuff can be built. If you think about India, India has capital constraints. So they've been on and off with crypto. They'll get there eventually, on and off. An easy way of getting India into crypto is just by putting gold on chain.
For sure. Yeah.
Hey guys, welcome to Everyday Finance. Forecasts are always looked at to help people make choices. But Real Vision CEO Raoul Pal says that most of the time, people don't act on them. Here's why. In the past, Bitcoin has always tripled or more. Within 12 to 18 months of each half, this happened in 2012, 2016, and 2020, all of which led to record highs driven by increased liquidity and momentum. The current cycle has the same setup. The global M2 money supply is rising. The US dollar index has dropped to 97, and bond prices are falling. These are all classic signs of lessening liquidity, which usually causes investors to put their money into scarce, high-growth assets like Bitcoin. Even so, a lot of buyers are hesitant because they are distracted by short-term market volatility or stories in the news that aren't up to date. People like Powell and other economic experts say that it's often too late to stop a market move once. The signs are clear. Stay tuned until the end of the video, where Raoul Pal explains how these big-picture trends relate to Bitcoin's huge potential and why so many buyers are likely to miss the breakout.
Focus, therefore, because, sitting on the Sui Foundation, for example, our focus is finding people to partner with who want to build on. But you don't need to do that so much as say, we've got a network. So if you're coming to our network to do stuff, we've got this new amazing tool of which you can do things with. It's kind of somewhat different. You're not going to Germany and say, why don't you put your driving licenses on Ton? What you're doing is saying, listen, we've got this massive network, come and build stuff here.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, we're trying to be less sort of convincing by, dishing out grants and spending a lot of money to acquire users. Quite the opposite. We're saying, look, plug in here and we can add a 0 or 2 to your user base, right? And so of course the commercial terms, we have done grants, we'll do grants in the future, but we want to focus on the big stuff, the stuff that really moves the needle. There's a million things to do and there's like 5 things that matter. Well, let's get those right. So the strategy is called focus, right? US market entry. Clearly that's a big one, right? As you know, the US is 70% of all, global capital markets and equities and stuff like that, right? We're not even in the US proper yet at all. That's coming, right? And doubling down on stablecoins, right? I mean, stablecoins is one of the largest and most exciting parts of this industry. Huge TAM, massive network effect. Tether's making more money than Goldman Sachs with considerable less people. And the U.S. government wants it, right? And who's going to buy the U.S. bonds? It's not going to be the Chinese, the Russians, the Saudis, or even the Japanese. It's going to be Tether and Circle, which hopefully is going to go public this week. And of course, it's faster, cheaper, 24/7. You can take self-custody, a wonderful innovation, right? And so what we're doing is the big stuff. Stablecoins is definitely in that category. Gaming will be in that category. Platform monetization will be in that category. And then we've got some blanks to fill. We're not properly in Korea yet. We're not on Upbit, So hopefully that will come. And so we're quite early, actually, right? And we also haven't really told the story well enough, and we want to also tell the story really well to the developers, right? So maybe this is another call. Hopefully you have developers in your audience, but you can build on Telegram, on Ton, and you can monetize. And of course, the world's best Web3 developers tend to sit in the US, right? And we're just coming into the market.
I think you'll find just because of Telegram is a unique thing, people will build different use cases than we've seen yet use elsewhere. And I think that's going to be fascinating. What people think of is like, how do I build things for the network? We saw what got built on top of Telegram already, and what's been built on top of Facebook, these kind of closed networks, really different stuff can be built.
Yeah, and we were starting with the basics, right? Like almost like a Revolut type experience on Telegram, just default global, right? Where you can have a dollar account. Let's give it to them, whether that's a Tether or Circle or USD1 or something like that. Paxos could be interesting because they share the yield. And then a dollar with a yield, right? I call it the digital money market fund. Again, I think the best comparison is again China, Tencent and Alibaba. When they launched the digital money market fund, one of them was called leftover treasure, very Chinese. You sweep it in from your checking account into your yield account. They went to 100 billion each, like in no time, right? Bigger than the, I think, JP Morgan Prime Money Market Fund at that time, right? So we just launched Athena. Right. And of course, real world assets is another big topic, right? Telegram has $1.7 billion of convertible bonds. They just refinanced them last week. And we're trying to put also that on chain, right? So we have a captive issuer. And of course, it would be nice if that yield stays within the ecosystem and doesn't leak out to traditional finance, but stays in the country, in the network states, in the network continent, right? And then, we launched Tether Gold. My respect for gold has grown a lot since I've gone down the rabbit hole here of Bitcoin and crypto, right? And of course, gold has done very well, might continue to do very well. And so now, in emerging markets, as gold, the problem is, to get the LME, whatever it is, $3,300 an ounce, you need to be rich, right? If you're like a poor person in Africa, or in India, you might get jewelry, but, half of I've got not even an ounce of gold on my wedding band here, but half the cost of that item, of any jewelry item also, will be the craftsmanship and so forth. And now you can own a fraction of gold in your Telegram wallet sitting in Nigeria.
If you think about India has capital constraints, so they've been on and off with crypto. They'll get there eventually, on and off. An easy way of getting India into crypto is just by putting gold on chain.
For sure, yeah.
It's not that the market is broken. Most investors just don't know where they are in the cycle, which makes them very angry right before the next big move. It's easy to think something is wrong when altcoin prices drop and stay the same. It's normal for the market to go through this low sentiment, misallocated phase every so often. This is backed up by history. Altcoins turned a corner at times like these. In 2019, 2021, 2022, and 2023, often, problem is how people are feeling. Even though Bitcoin might seem stable or even strong, other assets are still being held back, which makes many people think the window has passed. In fact, these big drops compared to Bitcoin often lead to a huge rotation, especially when big. Signals like rising global M2 and falling ISM data and a weakening dollar start to favor risky assets again. A systemic reset is often what seems like a state of stagnation. And buyers who are impatient during this part of the cycle often miss out when the next leg of the cycle starts to move.
So what is your job now at the foundation? What are you trying to achieve? You've got the currency, it's launched, there's a network.
Yeah.
What is your job? How on earth are you going to get this across the line? How are you going to develop this ecosystem and economy for the next 10 years?
Well, it is my first digital nation. So first term, just over 100 days into the job. But
we call you King Manny now. Are you a dictator?
Not at all. No. By the people, for the people, from the people. I'm the president is office hours. You can again. I don't take any compensation. I'm doing this frankly for the greater good, for the mission, right? And again, it doesn't suit me, and of course, I need to manage my day-to-day as well, which is why I've brought in a strong team. So really, consider me just more like a chairman role, where of course the first 100 days were very active, but now we've defined a strategy which I can talk about. We brought in the leadership team. We hired a CEO who's one of the co-founders of MoonPay, an old friend of mine, a German execution operator, he's sort of whipping this organization into shape, I would say. Good goalkeeper, clean slate. Like Germans are the best goalkeeper nation in football, or soccer as you call them. And of course, a lot of important people around him. And now we are fully in execution mode. And the priority number one is coming to the US. So Ton has avoided the US under Biden-Harris, and maybe that was overly conservative. But Independence Day is near. So around the 4th of July, you can expect what I would call a sort of decisive market entry. What does that mean? For US users, you might not know this, but within the Telegram app, there is basically a wallet for non-US users in the settings menu. And we're going to basically lift the geo-block. It is currently geo-blocked and has been since inception for US users around the 4th of July. And Telegram, without stating so detailed numbers, but had over or just under 100 million downloads just in the US, just in iOS over the last 12 months, right? And as you might know, no one has actually won the messaging game proper in the US yet. There's tons of iMessage, tons of SMS. WhatsApp is big, but not as big as it is internationally. Yeah. And of course, there's Signal and Telegram. And so it's going to be really interesting. And then we, of course, are keen to list on all the relevant US spot exchanges, which is coming. I can't, of course, share too many details, but you can, of course, expect.
I mean, it's a big enough project. I mean, your FDV is very high. It's a big project. So
yeah, and of course, I mean, I would say it's of all the contenders for like $1 trillion protocols, and of course, Ton is by no means the only one. Quite. I mean, of course, there's Bitcoin at 2 trillion, and Ethereum, I've peaked I think at 450 billion, and sort of had a bit of a speed bump. Hopefully, they're gonna reconnect with the identity, what capitalism looks like, and you can expect me as the Ton Foundation president to be, let's say, commercial as the history of my career as an investor. And of course, I've been deeply impressed by Solana. They have executed, really well. And of course, in Sui and Aptos, there's lots of activity there, right? But of course, in every chain is a superpower, right? And we're not trying to imitate or frankly, even sort of compete with other chains. We think we want to grow the pie, right? We want to bring in hundreds of millions of users, ultimately billions of users. The first billion is the hardest in my humble experience, right? So Telegram is not stopping. We're at 1 billion. 2 billion, 3 billion, maybe more. That's the plan, right? And Pavel, of course, is the gloves are off. I mean, he's very, 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 very focused on this, right? And then the key question we have is how do we basically convert the Telegram messaging user to a blockchain user at large, but of course specifically Ton. And of course, we can do things that other chains just can't do, right? From a UI UX perspective. And so forth. And Telegram there's 10 million businesses on Telegram who effectively run their business on Telegram. Most of them are small, some are not that small. So there's like platforms like the bot platform, the ads platform, the mini app platform. And we can sort of just align the incentives here that basically benefits the whole industry at large, but of course specifically with a focus on driving adoption for Toncoin.
What is the vision for Ton itself? What role does it play within the ecosystem? Is it the kind of infrastructure layer that things get built on top of and that generates the economic activity? Is it the loyalty layer? Is it the currency layer? What the fuck is it?
Well, I guess it's a bit like, the blind people touch an elephant, right? No, what I would say, if this is not the network state, but the network continent, if this is Satorica, the United States of Satorica, what Telegram is doing, right? It is basically freedom of speech, right? It is the free speech messaging platform that respects user privacy, and of course it's not a coincidence that that's the First Amendment in the U.S. Constitution, right? Now, what Ton does is basically providing the property rights layer, basically the economic layer, right? And the mission in one sentence is putting freedom into orbit, right? Whether that's freedom of speech or freedom to transact, voluntary exchange, free markets, and of course also banking the unbanked in the end, right? And freedom isn't free. The mission has to be financed, right? We also, of course, compensating Telegram for the exclusivity that Ton has with the messenger. And the point is putting freedom into orbit. I mean, it might sound a bit cheesy, but the difference of basically launching a rocket and reaching orbit. If you don't reach orbit, you come down. If you reach orbit, it stays there for 1,000 years, like forever, right? And I think this is, really important as a mission because, there's governments in authoritarian regimes that have other ideas, right? They want a central bank digital currency linked to a social credit score, linked to QR codes and digital IDs and sort of digital dystopia, right? And I'd much rather, I'm on team freedom, right? Much rather make sure that freedom prevails and the American idea is going to take us into the next, decades and centuries. And that's really what I'm here for, right? In terms of mission.
Raoul Pal's most recent crypto report makes a strong point right now. The smartest thing investors can do is to make their own plan, not follow predictions, price goals, or different influencers looking for certainty. No one can regularly call exact tops or bottoms, not even the smartest macro experts like Pal. They work with probabilities, ranges, and trends instead, which is the way most investors should think. What's really bad is when people give up on that way of doing things. After one rough week, fear takes over. When there is a small drop, everyone thinks the circle is broken. But there have been no major changes to the picture or the macro. Only the mood has changed. And it's this change in mood that throws people off when prices are flat. When they stop paying attention to the structure and start paying attention to noise, they miss the real move. Crypto investors who think it will be very profitable aren't trying to pick the best time to buy. They make a promise, let time and accumulation work, and stick to their plan even when things go wrong. Be clear, it's not daily price changes, tweets that go popular, or big predictions that matter in the end. It's being patient, consistent, and trusting your own process.